Welcome to Life Stories, where we dive into real-life experiences, lessons, and the powerful journeys that shape our lives. Today's story is one of betrayal, family dynamics, and the unexpected twists that life throws our way. It's about a small business owner who was asked to cater her cousin's wedding for free, only to find herself at the center of a malicious attempt to destroy her reputation. As the truth unfolds, it becomes clear that actions have consequences, and no one can escape the fallout of their choices. Let's begin today's story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It all began one bright summer morning when I received a call from Emily. She was my cousin, someone I had always gotten along with, and I genuinely cared about her. So, when she excitedly called me to chat about her upcoming wedding, I was thrilled. After all, weddings were a big deal in our family, and hers was going to be no different. We talked for a while about her wedding plans, discussing everything from the dress to the flowers. It was clear that Emily was over the moon with excitement, and I was happy to listen to her talk about her dream day. But then, as the conversation shifted to catering, her voice changed. I could hear the nervousness in her tone as she asked, almost hesitantly, "So, I was wondering, would you cater my wedding?" I smiled, thinking it was a lovely thought. Catering weddings was my business. After all, I had worked for years building a reputation for quality, and it was nice to think she wanted to involve me in such an important event. "That sounds great, Emily," I said warmly. "What's your budget? I can work with you to make sure we get everything just right." But her response made my heart sink. "I was hoping you did it for free. As a wedding gift," she said, almost too casually. I was stunned. The request was nothing short of outrageous. We weren't talking about a small gathering here. This was going to be a wedding with over 150 guests. A wedding that required careful planning, top-quality ingredients, and skilled staff to execute perfectly. I could hardly believe she was asking me to shoulder the entire cost. Labor and time investment, especially when I had worked so hard to get where I was in my business. "Emily, I can't do that," I said firmly, trying to keep my tone respectful but resolute. "It's a huge undertaking. The ingredients alone would cost me a fortune, not to mention the staff and time involved. I just can't afford to do it for free." I could hear the disappointment in her voice, and for a moment, it made me question if I was being too rigid. "But we're family," she said, her voice softening, "and this could be great exposure for your business. Think of all the people who will see your work." I could feel my chest tighten as I held back frustration. Of course, I understood the value of exposure. I ran a small catering business, and I wasn't naive enough to think that a well-executed wedding wouldn't bring attention. But running a business wasn't about doing favors at the expense of one's livelihood. It was about sustaining yourself, about valuing your craft, and making sure your work was compensated fairly. I had spent years building my reputation, and asking me to sacrifice that for a wedding gift just didn't sit right. "Emily," I said, trying to stay calm, "this is my livelihood. It's not just about exposure, it's about paying the bills, taking care of my team, and making sure that every event I do is my best work. I can't afford to do it for free." She sighed dramatically on the other end of the line, and I could almost picture her rolling her eyes. "Fine," she muttered, "I'll just find someone else. It shouldn't be a big deal, right?" Her words stung, though I tried not to show it. If she really valued me as a family member, as someone who had been a part of her life for so long, I expected a bit more understanding. But at that moment, it seemed she cared more about getting a free wedding than about the feelings or boundaries of the people she asked for help. After our conversation, I didn't think much more of it. It was a painful but simple rejection, and I figured that would be the end of it. The rest of the day went on like any other, and I didn't hear much about the wedding after that. My mom mentioned, in passing, that Emily had found another caterer who would do the job, and that was the last I heard of it. I continued my work and went about my life, knowing the wedding was fast approaching. The day of the wedding came and went without so much as a call. I wasn't invited, of course, and in a way, I was glad. I needed a break from the stresses of work and life. And so I spent the evening relaxing at home. It was a rare Saturday off. And I was content to just be in my own space, enjoying the peace that came with it. But everything changed the following morning. I woke up early, groggy from a good night's sleep, and checked my phone to see dozens of missed calls. The first few were from my mom. Then there were a few from Emily herself. And several from her mother. Something was clearly wrong. I answered my mom's call, already sensing the weight of the situation. Her voice was frantic, barely above a whisper as she said, "Oh my God, it's a disaster. Emily's wedding, it's a mess. The food is horrible, and she's freaking out. Can you help?" I rubbed my eyes, trying to process her words. "What happened?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "The caterer she hired, the chicken was undercooked. The pasta was cold, and the seafood platter was just canned tuna on a plate. People were leaving early. The guests were furious. Emily's begging you to come fix it." The irony hit me like a ton of bricks. After turning down my offer to cater for free, Emily had hired someone else, and now she was calling me to fix the mess they had made. The situation was tragic, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a small, bitter sense of satisfaction. I had warned her. I had said it would be too much for her to ask. That catering for a wedding wasn't something to be taken lightly. And now, her decision to save a little money had backfired spectacularly. Still, I wasn't sure what to do. I had my own life to live. And I had learned over the years that some people simply had to face the consequences of their actions. I didn't need to swoop in and fix things for her. I had enough on my plate. "Tell her I'm unavailable," I said to my mom. "I can't help." I wouldn't want to take business away from the caterer she hired. My mom, knowing better than to argue with me on this, relayed the message. Emily's reaction? She lost her mind. The next few hours were a blur. But one thing was clear. Emily was furious. I received a long, heated text from her later that morning. She was angry, accusing me of ruining her wedding, of being selfish and unwilling to help family when they needed it most. Her words were sharp, designed to hurt, to guilt me into feeling like the villain of the story. But I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and a strange sense of vindication. I'd already warned her, hadn't I? I had made it clear that this wasn't something I could do for free. And still, she had decided to go with another caterer, hoping they could provide a miracle on a shoestring budget. And now, when things went south, she expected me to be her safety net. I was her family, yes, but I was also a businesswoman, and my time and effort were worth more than what she was offering. I tried to let it go. I didn't respond to her text, choosing instead to focus on work and the people who truly valued my services. But then, things started to get worse. A few days later, I noticed something odd. My business page was flooded with fake reviews. Dozens of them, posted within hours of each other. The comments were harsh, cruel even, accusing me of being unprofessional, of providing bland, cold food that made guests sick. They all seemed eerily similar, too similar. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But as I read more and more of these fake reviews, I started to put the pieces together. Most of the accounts that posted them were brand new, with no profile pictures and little to no information. Some had odd usernames, and a few of them even seemed to have familiar names, Emily's friends. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just a coincidence. Emily was actively trying to sabotage my business. I was furious, but I couldn't act without proof. So, I began investigating. I called a few of the people who had left these reviews, hoping to catch something that would tie them back to Emily. The stories they told didn't add up. None of them had attended any of my events. They had no idea who I was or what I did. I knew then that Emily was behind it all. The frustration bubbled up inside me. But I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with it. So, I called her. She didn't pick up. Of course, she didn't. So, I texted her, keeping it calm at first, trying to appeal to whatever empathy she might still have for me. "Hey, Emily," I wrote. "I just saw a bunch of fake reviews on my business page. I know you're upset, but this isn't the way to handle it. Please have them taken down. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the send button. I had hoped for a response, a reasonable, rational conversation. But when she read the message and didn't reply, I knew she had no intention of making things right. I wasn't surprised when, minutes later, she blocked me. That was the moment I knew for sure. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. This was war. It wasn't long before I started getting calls from people who had seen the fake reviews online, worried that my business was in trouble. One or two customers even canceled their bookings, clearly spooked by the lies Emily had spread. I had to take action. I spent the entire next day reporting each fake review, hoping that Facebook and Google would remove them. But the damage had already been done. Some of my real clients had doubts now, and that hurt more than anything else. I had built this business from the ground up, and now, thanks to Emily's petty revenge, it felt like it was all falling apart. I couldn't prove it yet, but I knew that Emily was behind it, and I was determined to stop her before she could do any more harm. I knew that this wouldn't end with just some fake reviews. It had already gone too far for that. I needed more evidence, so I called in a favor from a friend of mine, someone who knew how to get the truth. Sophie, a mutual acquaintance, was perfect for the job. I asked her to reach out to Emily, pretending to be a bride looking for catering recommendations. Sophie agreed without hesitation. What happened next would change everything. Sophie's message to Emily came through like clockwork, and I waited anxiously as the plan unfolded. Sophie had messaged Emily from a fake account, pretending to be a bride on the hunt for a caterer. She asked Emily for recommendations, knowing exactly how Emily would respond. It didn't take long for Emily to take the bait. Oh my God, yes, Emily had written, without a second thought. Just avoid this business at all costs. Total disaster. Actually, I'm organizing a group to leave bad reviews. We're all going to warn people about them. Sophie's fingers flew over the keys as she kept the conversation going, luring Emily into revealing everything. Soon, Emily had invited Sophie into a group chat, filled with more than 15 of her friends, all of them preparing to flood my business page with fake reviews. The group was full of detailed plans, scripts for the reviews, fake stories to back them up, and even photos of disgusting food taken from the internet that they were going to use as evidence of my supposed incompetence. I could hardly believe what I was reading. It was one thing for Emily to be upset, but this was downright malicious. These weren't just angry words or petty complaints. This was a calculated attempt to destroy everything I had worked for. Sophie took screenshots of the entire conversation, gathering the hard evidence I needed. With this, I knew I could expose Emily for what she truly was, someone who wasn't just upset about a wedding, but someone who was willing to go to extreme lengths to ruin my business. Once I had the proof, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act. The following morning, I called Emily's father, John, someone I had always gotten along with and respected. He had always been supportive of my business, and I knew he had no idea what his daughter was up to. John, I need to talk to you. I began, my voice tight with anger. This isn't easy, but Emily's been trying to ruin my business. She's been posting fake reviews. And now, I have proof that she's organizing others to do the same. She's not just upset, she's actively trying to destroy me. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But then he sighed deeply, his voice calm and resigned. I'll handle it, he said. Within an hour, Emily unblocked me on all platforms. She sent me a frantic text, filled with excuses. Why would you tell my dad? You're ruining everything, she wrote, trying to shift the blame onto me. You didn't even help me when I needed you. I was just mad. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Emily had crossed a line, and I had no intention of letting her get away with it. As I expected, my business page was soon restored, and the fake reviews were removed. But Emily's actions didn't stop there. The real twist came when I received a call from the original caterer, the one Emily had hired after I turned her down. Hey, I need to tell you something. he said, sounding frustrated. Emily tried to file a chargeback on my payment. She claimed I scammed her after she ate all the food. Can you believe that? I was floored. Emily wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. She was trying to pull a fast one on the original caterer as well. She thought she could get away with eating the food, then demanding her money back. The nerve. I'm not letting this slide. The caterer continued. I'm taking her to small claims court. That was the moment it hit me. Emily wasn't just entitled and manipulative, she was a scammer. She had no respect for the people around her. And she was willing to go to any lengths to maintain her illusion of control. As the days passed, I realized Emily's life was starting to fall apart. News spread quickly, and people began talking about the mess she had caused. But I still had no idea how deep her troubles really ran. It wasn't until a few days later that I learned just how bad things were for her. Word came through the family that Emily had racked up a staggering amount of debt, over $30 in credit card bills. And worse, she had used her father's credit without his knowledge to pay for the extravagant wedding she could never afford. Her father, John, was devastated when he found out. But I wasn't surprised. Emily had always been good at pretending, hiding the truth behind her smile. Her actions had consequences, and the truth was finally catching up to her. She wasn't just trying to ruin my business, she was drowning in lies, debts, and a desperate need to maintain a life she couldn't afford. I had no idea where this would all end, but I knew one thing for sure. Emily wasn't going to get away with any of it. As the days went by, Emily's world began to unravel. Her debts were too high, and the lies were starting to catch up with her. Her attempt to ruin my business had backfired spectacularly, and I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of satisfaction and sympathy. She had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. I had tried to help her in the past, but at some point, you have to let people face the consequences of their actions. Then came the final blow. One afternoon, during a family gathering, Emily was confronted by her father, John. It was at my aunt's birthday party, surrounded by relatives who had no idea what was about to happen. In front of everyone, John stood up and calmly declared, "My daughter is a liar and a thief." The room fell silent as the reality of Emily's actions hit everyone in the room. The vendors who she had stiffed, the DJ, the florist, the cake decorator, one by one, they spoke up. The weight of Emily's wrongdoings was too much to ignore. Her father had finally cut ties with her, refusing to support her anymore. The room went cold as she tried to justify her actions. But no one was listening. Emily realized then that her facade was shattered, and there was no escape. She left the room in a fit of rage. And from that moment on, her life spiraled even further. In the end, she lost everything: her job, her reputation, and any remaining support from her family. Her attempts to destroy me and my business only brought her more pain. While I continued to rebuild and grow, life had a way of teaching lessons. And Emily had learned the hardest one: actions have consequences. For more inspiring stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for new videos from Life Stories.